The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show, the second to last bonus show before the election. I am increasingly nervous. When people ask me, all sorts of people will say to me, Pat, as if I know anything, right? What do you think is going to happen in this election? I mean, my opinion is one of tens of millions. And I say, I think Hillary has the numbers, but I don't know if I'm falling victim to the it's really close narrative that is mostly being perpetrated by the Trump campaign. I really don't know, but I am nervous.
If you asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have said easy landslide, and it would be entertaining to watch the demise of Trump.
Yeah.
But since the second email story broke, I mean, it's gotten a lot closer. And even though there's been some good news for Hillary Clinton in the past couple days,
is it too little,
early
too late?
voting signs, it's going to be questionable.
I mean, if you ask me what's the most likely scenario, I think it's Hillary Clinton has this wrapped up by 10 p.m. Eastern. I think the most likely scenario is that by 10 p.m. Eastern, we know that Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. Is it possible that we find out at 11 that Donald Trump has won? Yeah, I think it is. And that is absolutely horrifying to me.
Well, even in 2008, it was a relative landslide, but we didn't know until 11 o'clock Eastern that Obama had won.
Right.
Because that's when California, Oregon, Washington, the results come in. So really, we can add those numbers in ahead of time, and we'll probably see it around 10 o'clock. We'll see how close it is.
In 2012, it was at 10 o'clock that we knew, right? Because wasn't it Ohio?
It was Ohio.
Ohio was called at 10 o'clock. Even though I think Ohio closes at 9, I think it was called for Obama at 10. I might be mixing up 2008 and 2012 now. I don't know.
I mean, depending on how close it is and what the exit poll numbers look like, it could be called right away, and it could be called hours after or days after.
Yeah.
If there's 1 or 2 states that are going to decide the election, like North Carolina, Florida, we may not even know that day.
Yeah, let's hope that doesn't happen. I'm hoping that I can be home by 11 and, in bed by 11:20, although I don't know that that's going to happen. And that gets me to, we are doing live election coverage. I got a bunch of emails from people saying, are you going to be doing something? I will be here, and Ben Dixon will be here, and the whole team is actually going to be here. We'll be doing live election coverage starting at 7-ish, maybe like 6:50. We'll do 10 minutes, and then we'll have the first major results at 7 p.m. Eastern. A couple states close at 6 p.m., but really the big first closings are at 7 o'clock. We've been setting up a system where I will have my laptop, and I'll be able to fill in the map as we go, and we'll all be able to watch it and see it. I think it's going to be great. We are going to be taking calls throughout this process, and I think it's going to be great. I hope people join us. Technically, it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be a challenge technically, but Ben and I are going to be doing some testing of the system today. This will be YouTube Live. That's the key thing. The live election coverage will be on YouTube Live. We'll be dipping in and out of national news coverage. We'll be hopefully checking in with Sam Cedar at the Majority Report, and I think hopefully it will go well. You never know, but I'm hoping that we have a positive situation.
Well, I think regardless of what side you fall on here, if you're more liberal or conservative, depending on who you're supporting, you're going to enjoy this because you're going to either see our joy or our despair.
Yeah, at either my guess is at either 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. Eastern, there will either be a very relieved, I don't know about joy, I will either be relieved that we will have a center left to center right Democrat that won, or I will be absolutely horrified that arguably the most unqualified presidential candidate in the last at least 100 years has been elected president of the United States. One of those two scenarios will play itself out tomorrow, and we will see which of the two it is. Anything else you wanted to add on this?
Or it could be a 269 tie or recount or something, and this could go for months on end. So we don't really know.
If I had to bet, it will not be an electoral tie. I saw that scenario. There's a map where if Trump wins New Hampshire, Florida, and Ohio, you could get a 269 to 269 tie with Hillary Clinton. I wouldn't bet on that myself.
I don't think it's happened before. I mean, there's been deadlocks in the Electoral College, but not a 269 tie.
Yep, I don't see it happening. Okay, so Kim Jong-un. We haven't heard from North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un for some time, and he is threatening a missile launch to sort of, welcome or commemorate the United States electing a new president. Every time that this happens, most people I know have the same reaction. Initially, it's BS. Don't pay attention to it. The guy just wants attention. And then number two, they start reading, here's what's technologically possible based on the military capabilities that we know North Korea actually has. And then you get people who say, oh, you know what? Actually, maybe we should be concerned about this. And then sometimes friends of mine will get very militaristic and they'll say, we've got to go after this guy and we've got to take him out right now. That was always Lewis's idea, the idea of leading some kind of coup against the regime in North Korea, liberating everybody as some kind of heroes and then happily ever after. But things don't exactly work that way, particularly when, even though the alliance with China is a little bit frayed for North Korea, China is not ready to allow North Korea to fall. And China does have power.
I think we see so much hilarity out of what happens in North Korea that it's really hard to take one of these threats seriously.
Individually.
But nuclear weapons are nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, we should be concerned, especially if Trump is elected president on election night. There's no telling his temperament when it comes to nuclear weapons.
Yeah, well, we sort of know that he's okay with more countries having them. He said that. And
South Korea included.
That should be a concern to us, Saudi Arabia included.
Yeah.
And that is very, very disturbing. I'm a huge fan of all the North Korea documentaries. I don't know if you've seen any of them, but Vice has some. We interviewed a guy a couple years ago named Matt Dorzanczyk who went to North Korea and did a documentary. The one where I think it's Vice goes with Dennis Rodman to North Korea, and it is complete and utter chaos. I mean, it's insane, the stuff that goes on. I love them. I could watch those all day. I don't know if you're a fan.
I have seen a couple of them. And the amount of access that Dennis Rodman has been given, it's pretty hilarious how he may be the single biggest expert as terms of an ambassador to the country that we have here.
Dennis Rodman, who was kicked out of North Korea for defecating and vomiting in a hotel hallway in North Korea, is the most up-to-date on the current mental state of Kim Jong-un, on what is going on there behind the scenes. He is the guy of all people that at least we know about. There's probably some covert clandestine operators that are in North Korea who know a lot, but I would be shocked if they had the level of access to Kim Jong-un that Dennis Rodman had. I mean, it's disturbing.
I hadn't heard that he had done all that in a hotel room. You'd think most people, when going to North Korea, which you're really not even supposed to be in, according to our own government policy, they would be kind of be on pins and needles when it comes to that sort of thing. So that's pretty surprising.
Well, alcohol, that's what changed it for Dennis Rodman. Every time that there's an election, usually there's at least a few people who say, if this guy or the other woman or this woman or that guy, depending on who wins, I'm moving to Canada. Now, as we know, that's interesting and nonsense on two levels. Number one, it's really difficult to move to Canada. You can't just say, hey, I'm moving to Canada and move to Canada. It's a difficult process in terms of the immigration process. But number two, if you're a Republican and you say, if the Democrat wins, I'm moving to Canada, that really makes no sense, because when it comes to government policy, in basically every way, the Canadian government, Canada as a country, is way to the left of the United States. So I get it when liberals say it, although it still isn't easy to move to Canada. But when conservatives say, I'll move to Canada if the Democrat wins, it's like, well, why? It'd be much more conservative to stay.
Right. It's at least logically consistent when liberals say it. But when conservatives say it, I mean, where do you want to go that's more conservative than the United States? Like Saudi Arabia,
well,
Iran?
That's the best thing. When you actually talk to conservatives and you say, well, if you'd be leaving the U.S. because it's too liberal, your options are not that great when it comes to where you could go that's more conservative. I mean, you're talking about mostly Islamic religious theocracies or other extremist countries, or countries that are just in a disastrous condition economically. I don't see conservatives saying, I'm sick of this liberal BS in the U.S. I'm moving to Yemen. Right? I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so that's why it's really difficult, because in many ways, with the puritanical background of the United States, this is one of the more conservative places you can live, unless you're looking at a type of conservatism that I don't think most American Republicans like.
Yeah, the Democratic Party, too, in the United States is kind of on par with some of the more conservative parties elsewhere.
Yeah.
Look at England, Germany. I'm sure there's multiple examples.
Yeah, being a Democrat in the U.S. is considered basically center to center right in many European and other countries. But so not Canada, but there are countries where you can buy citizenship. And I found a list: Antigua and Barbuda, Cyprus, Dominica, Grenada, Hungary, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, and Bulgaria. Now the cost varies. In some places you have to make a donation in order to qualify for citizenship. In other places like Cyprus, you have to own real estate, and the real estate apparently has to be worth around 2.1 million US dollars. And then in other countries, you have to own bonds. So in Hungary and Bulgaria, you have to own bonds, government bonds in Bulgaria. In Hungary, I don't know if it's stock market bonds or exactly what bonds you have to own. The cheapest place where you can basically buy citizenship is Dominica, where for about $111,000, it's a $100K donation and $11,250 in an application fee. So $111,250 will get you citizenship in Dominica. Now, I don't know that much about Dominica, but my sense is that if you have a Dominican passport, you're pretty much okay in most of the world, right?
Right, and it's interesting looking at this list too, because a lot of these countries are small islands in the Caribbean. So you'd have to imagine if this is just trying to appeal to the American cruise goer who visits and says, well, if I can spend only a few $100,000 on citizenship, I might as well. I have the money.
I don't know what would be the most appeal. Like if I had the money and I decided I have to buy citizenship somewhere, right? Like I could go back to Argentina, renew my passport. I'm good. I'm a citizen because I was born there. I could go to Israel and go through the process of becoming a citizen there. So I had it, but let's say I didn't have those options and I was limited to this list and I had to buy citizenship somewhere. I think really I would be looking at Hungary, to be honest, because I have friends who have been there. I've never been there. Budapest is apparently beautiful. You're right in the middle of Europe. In terms of access, you can go to anywhere in Europe and very, very quickly. The economy, I know, is not doing particularly well, but maybe I could continue the show from there. I could Skype in every day or something like that. If I wanted to go the approach of just where could I hang on the beach and the weather is nice, then I'd go with one of the island Caribbean nations or something like that. But for overall, I think the most practical one for me here would be Hungary.
And if you look at the donation amounts, usually they're around $200,000, $300,000. But far and away, the most expensive would be Cyprus, where you have to own $2 million worth of real estate.
Yep.
That's just not a possibility for most people.
The other thing, and I know that this is sort of silly, but if you look at either the comments on one of these articles about buying citizenship, some people say, have you seen the economy in Cyprus? You'd have to buy 50 houses to have $2 million in real estate in Cyprus, which is not true. It's an exaggeration, but I do understand the point. Economically, there is some trouble in Cyprus. So where would you go if you could pick from this list of countries where you can buy citizenship? Is there a preference? I'm curious what the view of the audience would be on this. Do you have a choice, Pat, of which one of these places you would pick to buy citizenship?
I'm narrowing it down to Grenada and St. Kitts.
St. Kitts, really?
That may be. I haven't been to either one, though.
I've heard St. Kitts is very touristy.
I would just do a Google image search and see what the landscapes look like and pretty much go by that.
That's usually how I make most decisions about products, vacations, everything. I just go to images.google.com and type it in. And what looks good, that's what I buy. That's what I go with.
If you have a small amount of time to flee the country, you may not have that much time to do much more. You only have time for Google search.
You might be depending on a Google image search. If you have any ideas for things you want us to do tomorrow during the live election coverage, let me know. Tomorrow, Election Day, we will talk to you then.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.